Good morning, and thank you to those of you who are joining us this morning for a discussion with Driver Group. As you'll have seen, they put out their trading a trading update this morning. But the purpose of today is very much to take a deeper dive into the business and have an opportunity to speak with some of the heads of the different regions and understand some of the growth drivers which are taking the business forward on the positive momentum which we've already seen covered in that trading update. There will be an opportunity for Q&A at the end. The presentation is expected to last 45 to 50 minutes, so do bear with us, but there's plenty of material that I hope you will find interesting and useful. And then we will take Q&A at the end. So without further ado, I will hand over to Mark Wheeler.
Thanks, Hannah. If I could have the first slide just to introduce the team of people that will be presenting today, that would be great. In addition to myself, David Kilgour will be taking you through some of the headline financials that we're dealing with. And some faces that you won't have seen before will include David Merritt, who's looking after our business in Asia Pacific and the Middle East, a region that we're making great strides in developing. Hugo-Frans will tell you about our business in Europe. I'll actually cover the Americas myself because that's a project that I'm working on with Paul Battrick, who has been with the business a long time and is our global business development director. And the core business in the UK will be run through by Tom Comerford. So this effectively is our executive management team, and the people here will know all about our business inside out. So I'm conscious that some of you will know our business reasonably well and some will be quite new to it. So hopefully there'll be something for everyone to take away from the overview that we're going to give today. If we could move to the next slide, please, Hannah. The background, we've operated in the construction and related businesses space since 1978. So the business has been around a long time, starting in the UK, listed since 2005. In a number of the jurisdictions we operate in, we're regarded as market leader in expert witness, planning, commercial, technical disputes, all of the difficult things that arise in construction. There are over 250 staff worldwide working on projects, disputes, arbitrations, and the like, including we work in Africa, the Americas, Asia Pacific, Europe, and the Middle East. I'll go through the map in a moment. And one of the important things for the business that we need to tap into properly in the future is our global coverage, because global reach with some big projects is often really, really important. Next slide, please, Hannah. There are three main service streams that we operate in the business. Our project services business on the right-hand side involves placing people into live projects. That's something that we've been focusing on doing only in the UK, where we have a successful business. We've been reducing our project services presence elsewhere in the world for some while now. It's something that works better in the UK than elsewhere. Our driver Trett business, the brand in the middle, is the largest of our brands. We provide all kinds of dispute resolution services in arbitration, litigation, mediation. We do training, dispute avoidance, and also forensic planning and project planning. The Utilisation brand on the left, which is obviously markedly different in its presentation, is how we deliver expert witness services. It's the same pool of staff as driver Trett, but when we're acting as experts in large scale litigation, we can often achieve better rates, and on some of the larger projects we can achieve longer term better utilisation. So our intention is obviously to grow our higher end margin service within Utilisation, whilst maintaining our driver Trett business. That's the overview of the plan moving forward. Next slide, please, Hannah. Spend just a moment to talk about our geographical coverage, because it's something that we're going to be working hard to leverage over the next 2 or 3 years. We have a very strong business in the UK that Tom will take you through, a very diverse business in the Netherlands, Paris, Munich, and Spain, which Hugo will take you through. Those businesses are long established and have been trading well for a very long time. Our business in the Middle East has been through some of the challenges that region has experienced over the last couple of years, and is certainly a market-leading business in that region. We have only one or two competitors that can take on the size and type of projects that we do. South Africa is an arrangement that we have as a joint venture, which is very low risk to us and has already brought some significant rewards in terms of some projects starting over the last month and moving forward for the next couple of years. Across Asia Pacific, we have a number of offices in Australia, which is going very well. Singapore, that we've restructured recently, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and more recently Seoul in Korea, which is a really important location for us. Korean contractors will work across the world. Very helpful to do that. We have a business in Toronto, Calgary, and Vancouver, in fact, operating across the whole of Canada, which is again part of a joint venture that we're doing to reduce our risk and exposure there, but it's going well, about 5 or 6 years old now. And more recently, we've opened in New York with some experts there, and I'll take you through that in a little bit more detail later on. But a small business in the context of construction, highly qualified, specialized people spread thinly across the world. And we'll talk about how to join these dots up in one of my colleagues' presentations that will come up shortly. But a significant capacity in this business to deal with problem projects anywhere in the world. Next slide, please, Hannah. I'll hand over now to my colleague, Paul Battrick, to take you through what he does for us.
Good morning, all. I'm Paul Battrick, Global Business Development Director and part-time fee earner, mostly as a trainer. If we look at my title, you'll see Group. I liaise with all of our regions and attend many local business or regional business development meetings. Accordingly, I'm in touch with the business. Business, I ensure that all of our services are understood and that the regions understand each other's offerings in terms of skill sets, such that when making fee proposals, we put forward those best placed to deliver what our clients require. This closeness also allows me to introduce opportunities to the business units around the globe. On an average year, I'll probably receive around 100 inquiries and pass these around as suits. Development. I encourage clients, potential clients, and instructing law firms to recognise our global footprint, the services we offer, and the skills and experiences of the individuals that make up our team. Our clients come from all sectors, including some that you'd perhaps not expect, such as aerospace and defence. It's very true to say we have clients from A to Z, or Airbus to Zeppelin. Director, I understand the business. As Mark said, I've been in the business a very long time. Prior to taking up this role some 6 or 7 years ago, I was in operations. Before we had any overseas offices, I ran what was known as the international department, working predominantly for European-based clients with a sprinkling of clients from the Far East on projects around the globe. I haven't had a UK client for over 20 years. The contacts I made in that role have put me in good stead for my current role. If we could have the next slide, please, Hannah. Oh, sorry, that's that one. No, sorry. Excuse me. Simply put, you could say I join the dots up between clients, potential clients, law firms, and our offices and people. A couple of examples for you. Firstly, say Singapore office wish to meet the law firm White & Case. I have good relationships with White & Case in the UK, the US, Mexico, and Paris. Those relationships would be used firstly to gain the introduction, and secondly to provide references to our good standing within White & Case and the industry generally. A second example for you. Mark mentioned Korea and Korean contractors. I'm aware that Hyundai are developing a business in Latin America. Together with our Korean office, we are ensuring that those responsible for Latin America within Hyundai are aware of our capabilities and who to reach out to should they need support. We raise brand awareness via global sponsorships of conferences organised by such organisations as the International Chamber of Commerce, who incidentally are also the leading administrators for arbitrations in the world, and also the International Society of Construction Law, who have many countrywide societies who are focused on promoting knowledge within the industry. Such sponsorships gives our staff the opportunity to have speaking slots on panels manned by global practitioners and, due to COVID, often seen by a global virtual audience. Global sponsorships are supplemented by local or regional sponsorships of events to raise awareness of the brands and the people behind the brands. If I could have the next slide, please, Hannah. I assist in our global footprint, expanding in accordance with the group boards. An example, we took the risks during COVID to open an office in New York in August 2020 and in Madrid in 2020 November. I played an instrumental part in both of those and ensured that our existing contact base and new clients were progressively marketed, contacted, and our language skills necessary to work in Latin America, for instance, were known by all. The results have been good. Since opening in New York and Madrid, our profile, especially in relation to expert witness work, has grown considerably, and we received inquiries and won numerous commissions in the countries that you can see there: Colombia, Brazil, Mexico, Chile, Panama, Peru, Argentina, Bolivia, and Ecuador. It is certainly a success. Thank you for your time. Next slide, please, Hannah.
Hugo, would you like to take us through the business in Europe?
Yes, of course. Welcome, everybody. My name is Hugo-Frans. I'm with the business for 18 years and since 5 years in the role of managing mainland Europe, as we call it. Mainly working from the Netherlands, because I'm a Dutch national. I also am involved in the management of the offices in France, Germany, and Spain. The unique thing about these offices is that we work both on national as well as international projects. So working in a bilingual environment, doing work in Dutch, German, Spanish, French, and of course English. And that gives us a unique selling point to our international clients who are from outside of Europe, working in Europe for clients in Europe in a language they do not know or circumstances they are not familiar with. We help these clients. Likewise, we help also our clients working or who are based in Europe, working abroad, especially linking with other offices, as Paul just mentioned. Next slide, Hannah. So we also have a management team which is very diverse and speaks a lot of languages. In France, we have a management team consisting of 2 who focus on developing the international market within the Paris arbitration scene, as well as doing work in France for the big French contractors. This also helps us to branch out into Africa, where many French companies are doing projects, but also further afield, of course. I, together with my colleague Kjeld, work in the Netherlands, for where we work on national and domestic projects, and are one of the top advisors of the Dutch state company for infrastructure works. In Germany, we have a team focusing from Munich on works for the German engineering companies who still tend to work on a global basis and are very good clients when it comes to large international construction projects. Our colleague Javier in Madrid, who's also a dialysis expert, works from Madrid on projects both in Spain, in the Spanish language, also in Latin America, and also internationally for Spanish contractors. Many of the large Spanish contractors work worldwide, and we will come across them in Africa, Middle East, Asia Pacific, and of course Latin America. Next slide, Hannah. What are our objectives here on the mainland of Europe? That is to continue the growth of our office network, to be able to serve as a one-stop shop for these clients, both domestically and internationally, in their own language as well as many other languages. Our aim is to be in the top 3 of service providers of our types of services in these countries, which we are, for instance, in the Netherlands and Germany, and which we are almost in France and Spain. We will also be looking to branch out into other areas in Europe, areas that have a domestic market which is of interest to us, but also add that international flavor, or where we can connect into the wider business. So there's big focus on European clients that actually work worldwide, but also on the larger domestic projects. Next slide, Hannah. Some of the many clients we are working for are maybe known to you. Some are smaller regional players, but it's a very good mixture of employers, contractors, and also government bodies. And we are working for a couple of the leading industrial players of Europe, like Siemens, ABB, Linde, SNCF, Sistra, and a couple of the very interesting employers who construct large projects around Europe, like ETA, which is the big French power and utilities companies, likewise Tenet, GasUnie, which are big international players in the fields of gas transportation and electricity transportation in Northwestern Europe. Thank you all for your interest into Driver and mainland Europe. Next slide, Hannah. So what we aim at is delivering our global expertise on a local basis and helping our local clients work globally, and help them also with bridging that cultural and language gap within other areas of the world, and building strong relationships with these clients in order to be able to leverage of these relationships in other areas of the world. Thank you. Next slide, Hannah.
So I'd like to introduce Tom Comerford next, who runs our business in the UK, which obviously is where our business originates, where it's from, and probably our strongest region overall. So if you'd like to run through that business, Tom, that would be great.
Thank you, Mark, and good morning, everybody. As you can see from this slide, we currently operate from 7 offices in the UK, in locations designed to serve our clients both locally and nationally. All of those offices undertake both driver Trett consultancy commissions and dialysis expert witness commissions, both for UK and international clients. You'll notice our Teesside office there, that and our London office also provide driver project service offering, particularly to clients in the power, process, heavy engineering, chemicals and offshore wind market. We have in total, let's say, 7 offices. There's 147 staff, you can see there, of which 30 of those are experts. In our London office, we also house our dialysis technical team. That consists of architects, structural, mechanical, electrical and civil engineers. That team was originally formed only in 2014 and has grown from 1 person to over 25. As Mark says, it is a mature business and has been in existence now for over 40 years. Next slide, please, Hannah. Here in the UK, we also have a senior management team. It consists of Michael King, Helen Bentley, Michael Note-Young, Keith Strutt, and myself. All except Michael Note-Young are acting expert witnesses in addition to our management obligations and roles. Helen is a delay expert, but she's also responsible for what is known as our Minerva development program, which is designed to attract and develop our junior members of staff in the business. Keith Strutt is a quantum delay and project management expert, but he's also responsible for our utilisation development program in the UK. That's aimed at developing our budding experts and preparing them for the rigours of being an expert witness. Michael Note-Young, he manages our growing driver project services business from our office in Teesside. Michael King, he's a quantum expert. He established, developed and manages our business in Scotland and also assists with the operational running of the business in England. I'm the overall UK managing director. I'm also a quantum expert. All of the senior management team you can see there are long-term employees ranging from 8 to 22 years in service. We obviously know our business well and we know our people well. Next slide, please, Hannah. Similar to Hugo earlier, our previous slide, please, Hannah. Similar to Hugo earlier, our clients come from a mixture of leading lawyers, major contractors, subcontractors, insurance companies, and employer organisations. I've included on this slide some of the names that may be more familiar to people. You'll see there are UK PLCs such as Balfour Beatty, Galliford Try, Kia, Morgan Sindall and Mears, large private companies such as Waits, Lang O'Rourke, Mace, Siska McLaren. There are major European companies such as Airbus, Alstom, BAM, Bouygues, Bilfinger, Engie, E.ON, Hochtief, Scottish Power, which is part of Ibriola, Volcas, international contractors such as Multiplex and Lend-Lease and Sabic, and also international law firms such as Freshfields, Pinsent Masons, Cameron McKenna and Clyde & Co. There are many more clients in addition to these, but these are just a flavour of some of them I thought I'd bring to your attention. Next slide, please, Hannah. What are our aims and where do we see ourselves? Well, our aim is to provide services of the highest quality so that we grow our dispute resolution and expert witness services. We also aim to maintain our market share of UK claims, dispute avoidance, dispute resolution, commercial improvement and risk reduction market through a combination of our high quality staff and advanced technology capabilities. Further aim is to retain and develop our expert witnesses and their teams in order that we can capitalise on the opportunities to be involved in the larger disputes and commissions both UK and internationally that Mark and Paul Battrick referred to earlier. Also, we obviously look to attract new and up-and-coming experts for this from both within the business and from outside of the business. Thank you very much for your attention. Next slide, please.
I think the business in America has been quite new is something I'll take you through. It's not yet of a significant enough size that we have leadership representation on our executive board here. And generally speaking, when we've gone somewhere new, we've taken some of our existing experienced leadership to develop those businesses to the right level and the right stage. And so this is a project that Paul Battrick and I started, I think, after we met the management team that we wanted in New York, and in a very cold January long weekend visited New York and did a deal to hire those guys. And the lockdowns and the like have made all of that very challenging, but still we've managed to establish a profitable, viable, decent business in both those areas, particularly obviously in New York. Next slide, please, Hannah. Simon and Rob lead the business in New York. One is a testifying delay expert, the other a testifying quantum expert. So we've got both those options covered. And they've managed to go from 0 to 6 people and a profitable business in 12 months. And with the support of the group around them, where they're picking up larger projects, Tom's team in London are able to support them and deliver some of that work. One of the things that the pandemic has of course brought about is it's not really been a choice in getting to learn how to work from home across the world. And we've had different lockdowns at different times in different places, and yet still managed to support our new businesses that were in that sort of very early growth phase. Kevin O'Neill has been with us for about 6 years now, since I started the business in Canada. Incremental growth in that business. It's a good market to be in, and certainly one for the future. Our growth is more likely to be organic in Canada, whereas I see working with Simon and Rob, we'll probably be interested in the acquisition of some talent over the next year. So we expect that business to double over the next 12 months and probably again in the 12-month period following. We're seeing significant opportunity arising from that business, and the opportunity to link it in with the rest of the global team, and of course Paul helping drive that, means that joining up of our dots adds a great deal of power to the guys trying to start from what was effectively an organic standing start. Next slide, please, Hannah. We currently operate from one location effectively in New York, but the work is all over the US, and I would say probably 50% of that work is actually in South America as well. So we're picking up a great deal of work by simply our presence on that side of the Atlantic. We see us growing to perhaps 2 or 3 offices over the next 3 years. Miami is an important location to serve South America from. And of course, Houston has that oil and gas center to it, and that's probably on the horizon at some point in the future as well. And in Canada, we have a network of offices through our joint venture partner. We've got 20 offices, but we mainly occupy Calgary, Toronto, and Vancouver with those services and the people that operate through them. Next slide, please. Delivering delay analysis, quantum, expert witness, project advisory, pretty much all of our services. There is a little bit more of a focus in the US on government contracts and contracts with people like the Army Corps, for example, and lots of those bigger projects do involve government related bodies. So keen on doing that. Equally, there's a large insurance market in the US and a restructuring and insolvency market that we're tapping into. And I think it's fair to say that we might widen our presence globally in insurance related matters as we grow and develop the business over the next couple of years. Next slide, please, Hannah. There are a number of really top quality names there who are clients already in the US, and we've been involved there for about 15 months, I think. So from a standing start to get blue chip clients like that, a team of 6 and a decent profitable business, it's been quite a good result for the group, and a focus definitely on the future in Americas for us. Next slide, please. Plans over the next couple of years in both the USA and in Canada. In the US, that Washington, Florida, Houston, all those areas where we see significant projects, significant growth, particularly in infrastructure, somewhere we want to be. At some point, we'll have a presence in Latin America. It'll probably be a fairly simple, low-key presence. We're certainly using Hugo's team in Madrid, who have the Spanish language abilities, and in Paris, where we actually have some Portuguese abilities. That also helps the team in the US go forward in Latin America, where probably the most opportunities are. We want to get recognition as the go-to firm for expert work in the Americas. There are some established players in that marketplace, and over the next year or two, our sort of role to disrupt that, I think, is going to provide some significant opportunities. In Canada, we need to expand in Calgary and establish a bigger presence in Eastern Canada. The challenge in that market is recruiting, and sometimes we're having to import talent, but it's something we're working very hard at. We've had some really good hires over the last 6 months. And also leveraging between the staff that sit in Canada and the opportunities that are coming out of the US is important for us. Both of these countries have significant long-term infrastructure projects that require some form of support that we're certainly capable of providing. Next slide, please, Hannah. One of the key areas of our business to get right moving forward is Asia Pacific and the Middle East. And our colleague, David Merritt's just going to take you through some of the steps and some of the plans that we have in these regions, which are important to us to move the business forward. Over to you, David.
Good morning, everybody. My name is David Merritt, and I'm Managing Director and Head of the Middle East and APAC. A vast geographical area, very diverse, very dynamic. The one thing that this geographical area has in common is a huge investment in infrastructure, transportation links, power, energy. That has been particularly in the Middle East for the last 20 years, and we're seeing a huge investment program in Asia at the moment, as well as Australia. To cover this huge area, we have 14 offices strategically placed. We have 68 staff in our Middle East offering, 32 in our APAC business, and 13 expert witnesses, of which I am one. Next slide, please, Hannah. This is an overview of our senior management team covering Middle East and APAC. We have on the right there Alistair Snadden, who is Managing Director for the Asia Pacific region. He covers the offices in Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, South Korea, Hong Kong, and Australia. I tend to carry out the same role for the Middle East at the moment. We have two offices in the UAE, one in Dubai, one in Abu Dhabi. We have offices in Qatar and Kuwait, Oman, and Saudi Arabia. The other member of the senior management team there is Stuart Baird, who sits between the Middle East and Asia Pacific. He leads the charge on a lot of local BD. So that's our senior management team. Next slide, please, Hannah. This is just a snapshot of some of the blue chip clients we work for. You would have seen some of these on previous slides. From the top right-hand corner there, National Oil Company in Abu Dhabi, ADNOC. We work for some of the largest EPC contractors around the globe. You can see Hyundai, you can see Samsung, you see KEPCO and Daewoo. Very much a Korean focus there, which is very important to us at the moment. But equally, we're seeing some of the larger European contractors working in this region, Saipem, Alstom, Suez. So we leverage off the contacts we have, the strong contacts we have in Europe and the UK to build this client list. And as I said, that's just a brief snapshot at the moment. Next slide, please, Hannah. So what have we been up to? Well, the Middle East has felt the effects of the pandemic probably more than most, I would say, in terms of business. There's been an element of recentering our business in the Middle East and also de-risking our approach to business. So what does that mean? So we've exited the lower margin, higher risk project services markets, which used to be buoyant in the Middle East, but as liquidity is an issue here with lots of contractors. That has dried up for us, so we've exited that. We're now focusing much more on key accounts with blue chip international contractors and blue chip employers, such as some of the national oil companies. We're very much focused on high-end claims consulting work and the expert witness services. From a finance point of view, we've implemented tighter credit controls, targeting a reduction in debtor days and lowering the risk of bad debts. And the steps we've taken to implement those are broadly working across the region. What else we've done? We established a permanent presence in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, and we're working. We have many projects in Saudi Arabia, but we are working to improve our brand recognition there. Saudi Arabia is probably the epicenter of new investment works, new investments in infrastructure, in transportation in the Middle East, and it is an important market for us. Other steps we've taken, we downsized the Abu Dhabi office. We are relaunching a Dubai office. The UAE remains critical for a Middle East business because it's where the resource hub tends to be. It's where the skill sets that we need are based. So in that respect, it's very important. We've reduced our presence in Kuwait and Oman on a demand basis, really. Our geographical priorities are Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, and Abu Dhabi. The key market sectors for us really are ones you'd expect. They're the oil and gas, power and energy, also the renewables side of things, which is attracting a lot of investment here now, and there's some huge construction projects. Transportation infrastructure investment in Saudi and Qatar is still a huge industry and a huge target for us. One of the other aspects we are enhancing in the Middle East is technical expert witness offering via the Dialis brand. We have building our team now in the Middle East, based in Dubai, where most of the lawyers are based. And we will be adding to that team very, very shortly. We continue to leverage our global contacts with law firms. As you've heard throughout this presentation, we are globally connected with many law firms, and we are using that to introduce ourselves and expand our offering in this part of the world. Next slide, please, Hannah. Oh, no, to go back one. Asia Pacific strategy. Right, there has been an element of restructuring and recentering our business in Asia Pacific. Really, we have three areas we're focusing on, which is the North Asia region, South Asia, and Oceania. North Asia really revolves around our Korean office, and which we are staffing up. It's very much a business development hub. We are working for Koreans globally. Very little work for Koreans in Korea, although there is some work available there. But the vast majority of our work with Korean contractors is their outgoing investments elsewhere. And the same can be said of the Japanese and Chinese markets as well. The Japanese contractors and Chinese contractors are very, very active on the international stage. So we're using the Korean base as a springboard for that. This year we will be, and into next year, we'll be working hard on expanding and establishing our brand recognition in Seoul, Tokyo, Beijing, and Shanghai. The South Asia region is largely a manpower hub for us out of Singapore and Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. They support the wider region in terms of resources. The Oceania region, which is New Zealand and Australia, is a buoyant region at the moment, and we're seeing probably the biggest demand for our services out there on the East Coast, as they've invested in huge amounts of transportation links and infrastructure. Going forward, our geographical priorities in the APAC region are the Asian countries and Oceania. No surprise that the key market sectors really that we'll be focused on are the infrastructure, power and energy, and transport. Key accounts that I've run through before, again, much more blue chip focused, following clients, established clients, and looking to create new blue chip clients along the way, focusing on high-end claims work, expert services, and looking to add some technical expertise into that business as well. Next slide, please. So what is the outcome of all that? We're looking, or we have reduced our fixed cost base in both the Middle East and Asia Pacific. We are really pushing to become the leading, one of the leading providers of claims and expert services in these regions. We have a good brand recognition generally. There's an opportunity in Asian countries to push that even further. We will be increasing revenues, and because of the reductions in the fixed cost base and the management of the finances, that we're looking at an improvement in our net margins. Next slide, please, Hannah. Thank you for your time.
David, would you like to just run through what we've been doing in finance, in particular to support the business moving forward?
Yes, thanks, Mark. Good morning, everyone. My name's David Kilgour, CFO of the group, responsible obviously for the finance, governance of the company, and IT. So all of that is in support of the operations. As we're not going through any results this morning, I'd just like to pick up on a couple of areas which over the last couple of years we've been concentrating on to improve the performance of the business. The first is our cash generation. Back in 2017, the business had net debt, only a small amount, but it was net debt. Today, we approximately have 6.5 million net cash. And that is a constant position, fairly constant over the years, over the last few years of net cash position, fairly strong balance sheet, and it enables us to do things we would like to do in terms of opening new offices and invest in IT. This has been through a combination of more stringent cash control, credit checks, and weekly debtors review. So we run those across the regions, and it's the job of not just finance to collect the debt, it's the job of everyone. So the commission managers, the operations managers, they all understand that actually the doing the job is one part of it, but actually collecting the cash is just as important. So over this period of time, we've also funded a share buyback program, and we returned to a dividend in 2018, and that's continued throughout the period, and we've invested in IT. Next slide, please, Hannah. So just turning to that, IT systems. In 2017, the systems were outdated, and there was a high dependence on spreadsheets. Whilst all this worked, and it worked very well, it's not really suitable for a business growing and developing, particularly as systems do develop around us. So back in 2018-19, we first of all invested in Microsoft 365. And as I'm sure some of you are aware, that facilitates things like collaborative working, so we can work across the internet and a secure environment. It facilitates the internet communications, so Teams calls like this. This is all facilitated by having the right software in the first place. Cloud storage. Yes, it's a secure environment because it's a Microsoft environment. We have that validated regularly, but we're not on USB ports and things like that. So it's a very important part of our business's data security. One of the things which this did facilitate was when we all across the world went into various forms of lockdown during 2020 because of COVID, we were able to seamlessly transition into working from home and continue to service our clients with very little interruption at all. It also actually introduced version consistency across the business, so we weren't working on different versions of Excel, which historically had been the case. One of the things we're doing now is we're implementing an ERP system, which is MS Dynamics. This will facilitate more timely information and better analysis of the information, but more information available during a month as opposed to after the end of the month, etc. So this will drop value to our bottom line as we are able to identify utilisation of staff on a more timely basis. The one area then that I just touched upon is IT security. We have always invested in the security of our infrastructure. However, the weakest link these days is now more at the end user. All the phishing emails, which I'm sure many of you receive, with links in, it's so easy to click on one of those. So one of the areas we've invested in is the education, awareness training of our staff of what these things look like, because they become more and more clever in terms of and sophisticated in terms of what they look like, and they're very easy to fall for. So one of the areas we have invested significantly in is the awareness training to protect not only our staff but also the business as a whole, and not allow any Trojan horses into our network. Next slide, please, Hannah. So I think I'll just hand back to Mark at this stage. And
thanks, David.
So,
I think that what we've just provided is a fairly detailed overview of the business. I'm very happy to take questions. I think this is the first time that we've made available our most senior management team across the globe to give a bit more insight into what we're doing region by region. And so I'm very happy to take some questions if there are any from the attendants today.
Thank you very much to all of you for that really helpful canter through. Yes, we've got a couple. One, I think perhaps it was you, David Merritt, who mentioned this first. That was you saw yourself perhaps piggybacking on law firms to take you into new regions. And questions around how much is it down to the law firms who will help you expand into new regions versus your clients themselves?
That's a very good question. It's a very topical question, Hannah. It really is a mixture of both. Clients are being, and I don't know, we perhaps have to open this question for some of the others, but direct clients are becoming more particular and selecting experts, maybe themselves, which is a change in trend from 10, 15 years ago, where it was the lawyers that invariably selected experts. Some lawyers still choose the experts because the lawyers see the experts as part of their litigation or arbitration team. But we do see clients becoming much more involved in that process, that selection process. So it's not a black and white answer to that, but I don't know if Mark has a view on that.
I think on the big jobs, the decision as to who to appoint is made by the lawyer and the client. And if either doesn't particularly think an expert is up to scratch, you're not going to get the gig. Our aim in life is to be one of the top 2 or 3 names on both the client's list and the law firm's list. And what Paul was saying earlier about, joining up the dots with the introductions is pretty critical for that, really, because firstly, you want everyone to have heard of you, everyone to know that you're decent. And then, at that point in time, you're at least in usually with a 1 in 3 chance of securing the job before you've even made a pitch or a presentation. So it's a great question. It depends on the clients across the world. Some will have very fixed views as to who they will use. They will all have a clear list of who they don't want to use. It's important not to be on that one, but we need to market both, and we need to have that awareness across both the client base and the external law base.
Okay. The number of new offices in the next 3 to 5 years, first of all, sort of how many are you anticipating? And as the follow-up to that, how much of your ability to deliver on that is going to be down to hiring?
I think that's another great question, actually. One of the things I would say is that we have moved, and this is something over the last couple of years that's changed in Driver Group. We've moved from one of my predecessors' policies, which was to open new offices and grow them as much as possible, to more of a spoken hub type model. So, for instance, David has Dubai and Singapore as the big centres, the big hubs in those 2 regions. And then the offices that are elsewhere across the region where we need a presence are actually quite small. They're sort of 2 or 3 man offices. A lot of them are in serviced office accommodation. London is a big hub for us as well. New York will become that in the future. Slightly different for what Hugo does in Europe because of the language skills, where they're very much focused on individual offices. But globally, we will probably put 4 or 5 more flags on our map, mainly in the US. Perhaps there might be 1 or 2 in Asia, but we will be using larger hub offices and smaller spokes for regional representation. When a job comes in, it can never be handled. A big job comes in, it's never handled by 1 office anyway. The job I recently completed was in the Middle East. The lawyers were in London. It was an American client. And one of the key offices that I needed to interface with ultimately was Paris, who had some data on that particular sector that was critical. So those bolt-ons will be about achieving local representation, and the extent to which that is constrained by our ability to hire. Hiring is a big challenge. Got a big focus on it. Tom mentioned we have a development group in Minerva that we're pushing for internal development. But hiring good people is a challenge, and at the forefront of what this particular team of people focus on every month.
Well, we've got another question here then from Damien, which probably nicely leads on from that, in terms of what has happened in the past to stop the driver brand being recognised in the industry, and what has changed now to improve that, which I'm sure feeds into client wins as well as possible hires.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we've done much to stop it being recognised. I think, and perhaps Paul Battrick would like to comment on this as well. I think that a couple of years ago we had a focus on project management, and we invested more in that than we did in our core services. And perhaps that may have been a distraction. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Paul?
I don't think we've lost any brand awareness at all in Driver. We bought Trett in, what was it now, 10 years or 12 years or so ago. So we had two brands merge. Trett was an established brand in parts of the world where we as Driver, because I'm a Driver man, where Driver was not established. And I think since we bought Driver, when it became Driver Trett, the brand has grown on the consultancy side. Utilisation is about the same age group, and we've got some of the best experts in the world. Getting the lawyers in the world to understand Utilisation. I have a mantra of visibility. First of all, we've got to be visible to all law firms. Then when we put forward fee proposals, we've got to be credible. So we have the right experts with the right skill sets, which Mark says we develop in that group of people. And then when we do get the work, we perform. And if we perform, then people will come back to us. So I think the brand awareness is growing and the performance is growing, which is the recipe for good balanced growth.
Thank you. Okay, next one. The executive team, you all sound extremely busy, and you're all fee earners. Obviously quite unusual for a listed company. So, do you have the bandwidth to continue to drive the business strategically as well as service your clients?
I think that's a very good question. I think businesses like us, probably this are similar business models to law firms, perhaps accountancy businesses. In those type of businesses, my experience is they're always best run by leadership who actually know the business inside out, rather than a corporate model of people who don't know anything about the business in terms of what you're delivering, but are focused on management and KPIs and that kind of stuff. This is a fairly fast-moving environment that we work in. It helps to hire staff if your senior staff are leading practitioners in their field. It helps to retain them. It helps to manage them. I think when you're an expert on a large project, and each of the people that you see on the screen will have had this experience, what is important is to have a great support team behind you of assistants that can help give you that support so that you can still maintain the management function that you also have. I mean, plus I think it would add such a significant cost to have a layer of non-fee earning management in the business at this level without that detailed knowledge. I don't know, Tom, do you agree? Or are you going to tell me you're always too busy and you can't do it?
No, I'd certainly agree, Mark. If you take the UK management team for an example, one of our aims is that we regularly communicate as to what is going on in the business, and so that we're aware of that. So when you do have an example when somebody is heavily involved in an expert or witness appointment, one of the other team members just seamlessly takes over that operational side of it and the day-to-day decisions that have to be made. Also, below ourselves, there are various business support people that we have brought into the business to undertake dedicated functions that clearly support us in all of those areas. And we've been doing this for a very long period of time, and we've grown in that period of time. So, I think, as you said, it's akin to accountancy and law firms, and if we need to adapt, we will do. But at the moment, what we're doing works, I believe.
Yeah, it's really about leadership by example. That's what this group of people do.
We'll worry about the strategic, bigger, the bandwidth when we're double the size. I like that. Now I've got a question here for, well, all of you. So I don't know who wants to answer it, but what are the reasons why you don't win orders? Is it, or I should say contracts, is it a scale issue with clients being unwilling to hand you larger disputes and commissions, or are competitors offering services that you don't?
I think that's a Paul Battrick question. But what I would say is we do win a significant proportion of what we are put for. We have a really great repeat business rate and a really great win rate. But this question focuses on that percentage that don't don't cross the line. So, Paul, where are you going wrong?
Okay. First point I think I'd like to make is one that we've been saying a while. It's our aim to get, let's talk of expert witnesses, our aim to get Dialis on the lips of every lawyer in the world. Some lawyers will always have their favourites. There's an expert they've worked with a number of times, they know that expert, and whilst they may pick us for the first time for a beauty parade, as we call them, we may be second place or third place simply because of existing relationships. There are other people, perhaps our biggest rivals in the consultancy field are smaller companies. People that spin off from a large company, maybe like ourselves, set up a one-man, two-man band, three-man band, and they will obviously not have the overheads that we have, and they can underprice, but they may still have a relationship because they've been in a larger firm. And I think that's probably the two reasons, lack of knowledge or experience of us, and perhaps people undercutting our prices, but we're successful.
Okay, thank you. At the first half results, we were talking about the loss of a key team and how this accelerated longer term plans for this region. Sorry, we're talking about Asia Pacific here. How has this gone, and has there been any other losses of key staff?
I think I'll deal with the last bit first, and then ask David Merritt to comment on the team in Singapore and the rebuilding that we've done there. There haven't been any other significant losses. Generally speaking, we have a really high retention rate for key staff. I think that's probably at the center of something that we should say before answering that. And I've just lost David off of my screen. I don't know. Are you there? No, there you go. Right in the
Yes.
middle. I do apologize.
Yes.
Yeah, do you want to talk about this APAC rebuild we've been doing?
Yes, the business obviously faced with an exit of some staff last year, and we took a step back, and with Mark and Alistair out there, and myself and the country managers, we decided what we were going to do, and that was we were just going to rebuild. And since that discussion, we've added I won't name names on the call, but we've added key personnel in Singapore, several actually, key personnel in Korea, key personnel in Oceania. We've shifted the focus to particular markets, and we've done exactly what we set out to do. It's still a work in progress because we have more to add, but it's been very, very successful. As I sit here having a chat with you now, I know that our APAC region is swamped with inquiries and work. We are supporting our APAC region from the Middle East as well, whilst we're still building the teams out there. But I think we've recruited extremely well in APAC, and watch this space for further additions as well. And where we've travelled in the last 12 months from when we did have the loss of staff in Singapore to where we are now, I think we've exceeded my expectations. Maybe not Mark's, but yeah, we've come a long way.
Good to be
I think it has exceeded my expectations, because if in November of last year, when we dealt with the exit of a few people there, you had told me that we would be where we are today, I'd have shaken your hand and take that and been delighted, because it's exceeded my expectations, the way in which we've been able to build back that team.
Really encouraging. In which case then, this is a question really around pent-up demand and perhaps an expectation that with COVID and the delays and the problems that it caused, you would have seen more litigation emerging as a result of that. So the question here was around why we're not seeing this in the numbers yet. Is it just because of timing, and we're also seeing delay in court dates perhaps, or are disputes just not being litigated in the way that you would have expected them to be?
Well, firstly, I still consider there to be a fair bit of pent-up demand. When we first started talking about this, we'd been in lockdown for a little while, a few months. Nobody, I think, thought that this pandemic might necessarily go on as long as it has, or have the effect that it has had, which has been different in different regions. And certainly, we have had COVID-related work in some regions. In Middle East, it's been much slower to come through because of liquidity, but the disputes are still there. And certainly the pipeline of opportunity is bigger now in APAC and Middle East than I think I've ever known it, David. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah. We are starting to see, there's been certainly a lag, Hannah, with the impacts and the resolution of COVID-related issues. And yeah, there's a whole big legal question around how and if COVID-related damages are indeed recoverable. But there's been a lot of wait-and-see approaches from contractors and from employers. But we're seeing quite an uptick at the moment in the addressing of those issues. I think everyone's been very patient. Obviously, some people are very much out of pocket, contractor with the damages they've incurred, and they're pushing for some resolutions. Yeah, we're seeing that pick up quite considerably.
And we can expect to see some more of that over the next 6 months, 12 months.
For sure.
Okay, great. What else have I got here? I've got lots of them, people, so stick with me. How much has resource staff utilisation improved? At a previous session, you indicated that a small increase flows through to the bottom line very strongly.
Utilisation has improved across the business, and because the 258 people we talked about earlier are our staff, effectively, when they're busy, when they become above a certain level of utilisation, that drops straight to bottom line. I don't want to give any specific numbers around that for a number of reasons, but I think maybe David Kilgour, would you like to comment on that generally?
Yes, it does. I mean, we have a sizable fixed cost base, being the staff that we employ, and so as our utilisation goes above a certain percentage, then yes, it drops straight to the bottom line for the additional revenue we get. I would probably say, without giving any numbers, that the utilisation during the year has stayed fairly flat. Because again, it comes back to this, the additional demand that's out there hasn't factored through yet, but is factoring through in the last quarter. One of the things we mentioned is there has been a pickup there, and so that will flow through over the next few months, hopefully, and continue as that demand is satiated, and as we win our fair share.
Well, since I have you, David, obviously ERP implementations are notorious for overrunning. How are you making sure this doesn't happen this time?
Well, that's obviously a very detailed question, and it could be a very detailed answer to it. in simple terms, we've employed a industry-leading partner to help us implement the system. So we're trying to reduce the risks of the overrun and in terms of time, but also expense. We, as accountants anyway, you take a very prudent and risk-free look at things. So it's just a very detailed, concentrating on what is the most important issues in delivering the system, and keeping a focus on the prize, which is fairly sizable, because having more timely information will help with the utilisation, being able to identify that staff, as opposed to at the end of the month, find out that whoever a staff member had said they were going to be very busy in the month, and actually by the end of the month you find out that they were in the first 2 weeks, but the second 2 weeks they weren't. Having that as real-time information is going to help significantly in terms of utilisation, and that drop, as we've said, drops to the bottom line. So the size of the prize is very significant.
Our management team targeting 10% margins, and was this at an EBITDA or a operating profit level?
I think the management teams around the world in individual business units target significantly higher profits than that. We obviously then have to pull that together into a group and take our overhead and fixed cost out of it. This group of people have our strategic plan, and that's all about achieving, working towards and achieving and improving on double-digit margins in terms of the overall figures. But within the business units around the world, we obviously target significantly in excess of that. Some areas you can achieve more than others, and this is another reason why we want to focus on expert work rather than the lower margin work, because it makes it easier to achieve better figures.
Okay. Can you provide a flavour of how contract sizes vary? Do fee earners handle a large volume of small contracts, or is the group turnover dominated by larger contracts?
Well, that varies a bit. Hugo, would you like to give your sort of thoughts on that?
That indeed varies, and it can vary enormously. It can be jobs can be in size vary between a couple of millions to hundreds of millions, and fee-wise in the same range it can also vary. So fee-wise it can be jobs that bring in 5 or 10k in fees, but some easily go into the hundreds and thousands of euros or pounds in any case. So there's a huge variety, and you will see that in different markets the mix is also different. Here in Europe there's a reasonable amount of smaller type claims and a number of really big type claims, but in some other areas, like in the Middle East for instance, that mix is totally different.
Do you want to comment on that briefly, David, Merritt?
Yes, we tend to have the larger variety of disputes in this part of the world. The projects that we get involved in are some of the biggest and most challenging projects around. So big project, big dispute, and when we get involved, it's rare. Well, I can say rarely. It's almost never a 1 or 2 man job. We have projects. We're just mobilising now for a project with a Korean contractor on a Middle East project, and drawing resources from all over our network of offices with different skill sets, and that's I'm just trying to think the size of the team, but that's a dozen people, and that's good. That's good that we're going to keep a dozen people, fee earning well for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months and probably longer. But you know, as we come out of those projects and you get a chunk of people returning to the office or returning to the available list at one time, that presents its own challenges. So that pipeline of work is very important to us in the Middle East, where we're always looking for the next big project.
Thank you. That was really informative, actually. I do have a couple of perhaps more detailed number questions, David Kilgour. So I hope you haven't fallen asleep in the back row there. Quick question on debtor days. Why is it so low at the moment, and what will it be in 3 years' time?
Well, 3 years' time, I haven't got a crystal ball. So I couldn't comment on that. I actually, I wouldn't actually say they were particularly low, so I'm not sure what the questioner is actually looking at. We across the business, we have debtor days which vary enormously between different regions of the world. So in the Europe, UK, it's in the norm of sort of about between 50 and 60 debtor days. But it's in the Middle East, as I'm sure if anybody's ever worked in the Middle East, it's significantly higher than that. And so to ensure our risk of people paying, taking extended credit terms, etc., one of the things we do monitor very closely is our debtors there. But we quite often, particularly with clients we don't know, we request cash advances in terms of payments on account to reduce our risk profile and just keep the risk profile down. And the APAC region is more similar to broadly more similar to the European UK model. So the sort of it is a broad spectrum of numbers across the world. So yes, but I wouldn't say they were particularly low. There's a long way for us to go in terms of improving that.
And cash flow in the last 4 years, how much of it is due to the unwinding of working capital as the top line has fallen?
I wouldn't say it's particularly the working capital unwinding. I think it's more about us being more efficient and collecting our cash on a more timely basis. I think prior to that, the business went through a difficult patch from about 2015 through 2017-18, where collection of cash, not that it had dropped in importance, but it just wasn't being done as well as it should have been done. Okay. And I think since then it's just we've concentrated more on that area of our business, and throughout the business is understood that yes, deliver quality work, quality reports, quality service, but you haven't finished until you've collected the cash.
Very true. And then perhaps last one on cash. Net cash at the half year was 7.2 and average in the period was 4.7. Obviously today, net cash at September was given at 6.5. Can you expect a similar delta to average net cash for the period?
Cash flow does depend very much on timing of when obviously when revenues occur as well, and then obviously ultimately when people pay us. In terms of, there have been dips at times in our cash, but it's always stayed 4 to 5 million. So that's not it's not a major variance on the average. I'm not sure yet, and I can't give any predictions of where of cash would be in another 6 months' time or so at this point in time.
There's a couple of questions here on our forecasts, actually. So I would simply say to those who are asking that in answer to the question, are management comfortable with them? I think it's safe to say that we work collaboratively, so you can take what is in the market from us is certainly something that management are comfortable with. And then I quite like this one, perhaps, as a nice way to talk to the bigger picture again. In the past, the company has had good years and bad years, but the financials have been largely static for a number of years. Does Driver have the potential to be a much larger and more profitable business, or will it always remain niche and of a similar size?
So many issues wrapped up in one question there. I think the company, in terms of the good years and bad years thing, when you look back over our shoulder, and this is something we've touched on in previous city-facing presentations, there was a period of time where previous leadership wanted to go into project management and quantity surveying, which are commodity type businesses, and that drove the margin down whilst growing the top line significantly. And a business like this that has longer, particularly in quantity surveying and project management, that has longer term contracts, is a little bit like an oil tanker. You can yank the wheel around as quickly as you like. It takes a while to adjust direction, and also there are aged debts to collect in some of those contracts and some of those jurisdictions where we've, and David Merritt was very clear in his presentation as to how we've stepped back from some of those. So I think what you've seen over the last 2 or 3 years is a process within Driver, certainly the last 2, of change, where we've been putting in place a revised business strategy, which is about growing the stuff that we're good at, the core business, and as a team, we are far more focused now on growing our margin than we are our revenue. That's the only growth we're really interested in, is to be a much more profitable business. Is this business in 3 years' time going to be twice the size? No. We are of itself in a niche marketplace. Can it be a fair bit bigger? Yes. Am I going to give you a number for that? No. So it will, the business performance, it can be more profitable, it can be bigger, but we're not talking about doubling and tripling, and we're not in that kind of marketplace. What we're talking about is it being a professional services provider, trying to position ourselves in the right place to be market leader and as profitable as we can be in this sector.
Amen to that. Obviously, one other way to...
I should have written that down, Hannah, because it needs to go in the statement.
Another way to grow is by plugging on different services. And I know we've talked before about forensic accounting. Is this something else that you're continuing to pursue? Well,
Hugo and I did some work on that a little while ago, and we came fairly close to that bolt on, didn't we? Well, probably it was about 6 months ago. And so we're constantly looking for that in the marketplace. We're in a position to be acquisitive if we wish, but we're not looking to do anything big and dramatic like that. What we're looking to do is it's really about the acquisition of talent. And when we spot some talent, perhaps a small group of people that's an appropriate fit for us, we're able to explore those opportunities usually quite quickly. Hugo, would you just like to sort of touch on how you saw forensic accountancy as a really good bolt-on?
Yeah, of course. Well, we already have our normal types of services, being delay, quantum, technical. But on big disputes, you will always find the need for a more damages assessment, actually in the same type of commissions for the same type of clients and with the same law firms. So we still see that as an interesting additional sell to these clients and to these law firms. But yet it is still about identifying the right people who can do it, who have a reputation in a particular market where we are active. So there's a fit, and hence we are looking actively to that. But it's not the easiest things, because we really need a fit before we want to make that step.
Well, I think that's it really from the questions. So it just leaves me to say thank you very much for your time, and thank you to those who have attended for your time. Quick supplementary: why are buybacks not currently a priority?
Well, as and when we constantly monitor what we're doing with our cash. And we constantly discuss and keep that under review at group board. And there are a number of factors in play around that decision. Whilst we are not currently doing that, I'm absolutely not going to rule us doing that in the near future out again. Equally, I'm not going to make any commitment to that. It's always on the agenda as an option, and something the group board keep under quite close review. I think it's fair to say over the last couple of years, and David, I'm sure, will nod vigorously in agreement that we've been prudent with keeping our cash to the pandemic's an uncertain period, and it was only sensible to keep perhaps more cash than we might have done through that period, in order to ensure that we steered the company with a decent safety margin through that period. And as we move forward, we'll keep that constantly under review. There are a number of different ways we can invest our cash to add value to the business, and that's a regular discussion that we have in the business. Did you want to add anything to that, David? Nodding.
Just to nod. Yeah, no, it was just over the last couple of years, as you said, I mean, the uncertainty in the marketplace has necessitated that we are very careful with our cash and keep the business in a strong and stable position. Moving forward, things will be hopefully different as the pandemic becomes something in the rearview mirror and less in front of us. So hopefully things will revised, and we'll keep all of the opportunities on the table. But as Mark says, there is a lot of things we can do with our cash, including the acquisition of talent, which will drop to the bottom line as well.
Well, as one of our attendees says, thanks team, that was very informative. I concur with those sentiments. Keep up the good work, and we look forward to hearing of further progress I think it's a full year next, the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely, in December.
Great. Thanks, all. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.